Welcome to the show, everybody. It is a really strange occurrence, Seth and Sean Sports Radio. First of all, we're here after 2 weeks. And second of all, how is it that every single one of my teams is a winner this week? It just kind of, the Mets win, the Jets win, Syracuse wins. It's a three-peat for me.
Well, it depends how you see it. Is the Jets winning a game really winning for you at this point?
Oh no, absolutely not. But Seattle losing is a win. So I mean, we have right now the Jets have the 4th and 5th pick in the draft, and it's possible
the Giants have the 6th and the 7th.
No, and I think Philadelphia has the 9th and the 10th. So between the three of us, we kind of have 6 of the first 10 picks in the NFL draft. And then Philly's got another pick somewhere else. I think it's San Francisco's, right? Like way down.
They have San Francisco, Miami, and the Giants. And excuse me, on their own. Miami's won 4 in a row. San Francisco, I think, is a threat in the NFC, to be perfectly honest. So we'll see where those picks end up. We'll see if we can do a quarterback.
Yeah, let's talk the NFL first. Then we'll get into the baseball, and eventually I think we have to wind up with college football, right? I mean,
you wanted chaos, dude. You got chaos.
I almost got even more chaos than I wanted. But let's start with the NFL. So first, do you believe in the Patriots now? Like a couple of weeks ago, when I said the Patriots could be the best team in the AFC, and you basically scoffed at that. And now we are at a point where the Patriots are at the top of the AFC East and in the running for home field throughout the entire playoffs. And if they beat Buffalo this week on Monday Night Football, they have not even the inside track. They have both the inside and the next track to the division.
Okay. So let's look at who they've beaten in the last 6 weeks.
Does it matter?
No, but you're asking me whether I think they're legitimate.
Okay.
The Jets at the Chargers, which is a good win.
It's a good win.
At the Panthers are the Browns, who have completely fallen apart.
But at the time, a good win.
No, Chubb was out, Hunt was out. It wasn't a great win. The team would have started falling apart already. At the Falcons,
which is a bad win, which was not as good even a game as it could have been.
That was a horrendous game.
Yeah.
And they beat the Titans without Derrick Henry, AJ Green, or Julio Jones.
No, AJ Brown. You did
AJ Brown, excuse me. Or Julio Jones. So win this week. This is their next 3 weeks. At the Bills, at Indy versus the Bills.
So if they go 2-1,
you go 2-1. I still don't see you as a Super Bowl threat, but I call you legit. Win 2 of those 3.
So if they go 2-1, what's their record right now? I think they got 6 or what 8-4. So if they go 2-1, 10-5, right? They have the inside track for home field in the AFC.
Yeah, they got a one game.
Hold on, who's after those 3 games?
Then they have Jacksonville and they have Miami. Those are the last. So if they go 2-1 and they end up 4-1 and they end up 12-5, I mean, there is such first of all, there's such parity. It's incredible.
But they're going to have home field at 12-5.
Maybe. I mean, define home field. Do you think they're going to be the number 1 overall?
No, I think they're going to be the number 1 in the AFC. Yeah.
Okay. So you have Buffalo, who is a half a game back.
Right, but we're assuming they go 2-1, which means they.
But that doesn't mean they're not going to split with Buffalo.
No, I said let's say they split with Buffalo. Okay, but you don't have them winning it. You only have them losing one other game if they go 2-1. So they go 4-1.
Okay, so Baltimore has a half game lead. Cincinnati is a half game back. Again, I'm not going through all these schedules. So
right, but Cincinnati and Baltimore are playing each other along the way, right?
So yes, I don't know if they have it. I don't know if they have a second, if they played twice or they played once. I think they played once so far.
Okay.
Kansas City is 7-4. The Titans are 8-4, but they can't hold. I mean, there's no way they can hold with the talent they have left.
So we said it earlier that the best division we've said this in our preview, the best division in the AFC is the West, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we said. So
yes.
Kansas City, while being 7-4, has to play the best division going down the rest of the pike.
Yes, but let's see who they play and where they're playing.
Okay, so fair enough.
Okay, home against the Broncos.
Probably a win.
Home against the Raiders.
Definitely a win.
At the Chargers.
I'll give the Chargers the win on that.
The Chargers are so inconsistent right now. I don't really know what to do with them.
Okay.
Home against the Steelers.
Okay.
Come on. At the Bengals.
I think that's a loss.
That's a 50-50. We'll see where Cincy has been as good as any of the teams in the league, and they let Mike White throw for 793 yards and 11 touchdowns.
I get it. And I picked the Bengals to make the playoffs. They were my team. So, so far I'm doing pretty well on that. Okay.
And at the Broncos.
Okay. So they could go 5-1 too. They could also be 12-7. 12-5.
Look, if they play well, there's no playing at Tampa. There's no playing at Green Bay. Right. Like they could go 6-0. Look, if they revert back to how they played 3 weeks ago, they could go 3-3.
Correct.
So, the Chargers to me have been the most frustrating team to figure out in football.
So, are the Broncos the only team that you see that could be in? Sorry, not the Broncos. The Chiefs, the only team that could be the number 1 seed except for Tampa Bay, because except for Tampa Bay, New England, because I think the AFC North is going to beat the crap out of themselves. So
here's Buffalo's schedule. Home against the Patriots.
Yep.
At Tampa.
Yep.
Home against the Panthers. Okay. At the Patriots. Home against the Falcons. Home against the Jets.
Okay. So they'll win. If we split with New England,
it'll come down to the Buccaneers.
Right.
Which they would probably be an underdog against.
And they still have and New England still has a 1-game lead.
They have a half-game lead.
Oh, a half-game lead.
It's not in the loss column. It's in the win column.
Fair enough.
So I agree that the AFC North is going to beat the living crap out of each other.
Yeah.
I think Indy's going to overtake Tennessee. Tennessee, I mean, how do you win with your 3 best players out? I don't know if they can hold.
I like, how do you win with your 3 best players out and a quarterback that relies on play action pass?
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Tannehill, now this is not Tannehill's fault, but has reverted back to where he was with Miami because he doesn't have a running game. And
or any receivers for that.
Well, that too. But so I still stake that New England will be the number 1 seed. I think they have the easiest pathway forward.
I'll happily take the field.
Yeah. And then the NFC, it's Green Bay and everybody else, right? I mean,
well, they're still not the number 1 right now.
No, that's true.
But that division is, the Rams are still pretty good. San Francisco is scary. Seattle is, the wheels have fallen off in Seattle.
And I can't be any happier about that, mind you.
No, you can't. The question is, where do you guys, again, 2 picks most likely in the top 10. Let's keep it at that.
Yeah.
You can go in a lot of different directions. You need a cornerback horrendously.
We need a cornerback. We need an offensive lineman.
You need help on the offensive line. You need help on the defensive line. You need help all over on defense.
So the defensive line, when you get Carl Lawson back, I'm not sure you quite need as much on the defensive line as you do on the offensive line.
Okay.
I think the offensive line is definitely more of a point. When you look at the Giants with their 2 picks, and I think it's offensive line and best player available. I mean,
offensive line and best player on the defensive 7.
Right. Well, yeah. I meant
this replacing Daniel Jones is absurd to me.
Will not happen.
It shouldn't. Not at the first. If you get a guy like Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett falls to the 2nd round and you want to take a shot on it, go ahead. But their offensive line is a freaking disaster. And I don't know how you can properly judge. Now, would I give him an extension? No, I wouldn't. And he's so he's going into, the contract deal better than I do. He's going into his 4th year now. So the 5th year he can play under the cap, under the under the franchise, or they can extend him for 1 year as a restricted, and it's like a $15 million increase. But I don't see how you can do anything with him one way or the other. You can't make a judgment because actually his turnovers are significantly down, as strange as that sounds. He has his entire offensive line is a mess. Every player has been injured on the team. We may have to pick up Mike Lennon this week.
Well, I was just going to look to see whether today was Wednesday, so I was pretty busy, so I'm not sure. I definitely didn't make the selection. So the question is, did we miss him? And does it really matter since we don't have Aaron Jones either? Aaron Rodgers either. So we don't have we only have one quarterback, if any. I am looking at the recent activity. Did anybody pick up? Mike Lennon went for $12 today. So we are officially underdogs for the first time in a long time. We are underdogs 171 to 118.
Now, welcome to every other fantasy team I have this year.
We are likely to lose,
that's fine. Let's be honest here. We have a 3-game lead in our division. So 2-game, and I believe we have the toss up. So,
So I think you're right in that you can't make a judgment on Daniel Jones, but when you have a new GM that's coming in, right? Because Tish, there was a report that Gettleman was not going to be returning, but you're not firing the coach.
No.
And we'll get to this later with Brian Kelly and the AD, which is going to work the same way as the NFL GM and coach do. How do you bring in a GM that is the GM only waiting to fire the coach and bring in his own guy? Like,
there's three options. I mean, let's think about it logic. There's actually 4. Number one, you fire Judge at the end of the year. I don't think that's a particularly reasonable play.
Wait, is it reasonable or good play? They're different, because a reasonable play is absolutely true in the fact that the general manager would bring in a coach that he or she wants. It's reasonable to think that. Is it fair? No, of course not.
Well, the other thing is the Giants are still paying off Pat Shurmur, and they may still be paying off Ben McAdoo. They may have a year left on McAdoo's, or I think whoever it was. I think it was McAdoo. So because they fired him, both of them 2 years into 5-year deals. So if that is true, you're going to be literally paying for 4 coaches next year. I don't see that as practical. And has the luster come off of Judge? Without question. But the question is, and this is, Mara likes Judge. Does he bring in a GM that correlates with Judge? Or does he bring in an outsider? Not an outsider. Forget it. Number 2 is you move up one of the Giants guys like a Kevin.
Right. Look, if you move up Kevin Abrams, then you have what you need, at least for one more year.
Considering they've won one game, they've gone to one playoff in 9 years, I'm not particularly interested in bringing someone from the internals. And he's pretty well respected around the league, but that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me. This team needs a complete overhaul, and Abrams, although not the GM, has responsibilities that have led to this. So number 3, you bring in a guy who has worked with Judge in the past, whether it's somebody from New England or someone who worked with, whoever he's worked with around the league. And you automatically have that correlation. Or you bring in whoever. And like Vic Fangio in Denver, you got a 1 year in George Patton, who came over from Minnesota. You have a 1-year trial to see if it works, if it's the right fit. I kind of lean towards the fourth. Judge has not done enough for me for him to become the face of the organization at this point. I realize you're the Giants. You want continuity. Like, that's the way we've always been when we've been successful. Going back to the Allie freaking Sherman days in the 50s. And then you had then you had 20 years of irrelevance. And then you had the Parcells days in the early to late 80s. Then you had irrelevance. And then you had Fossil, who did a nice job for 5 or 6 years. And you had Coughlin, who did a nice job for 5 or 6 years. But the last 9 years have been a complete clusterfuck. And Judge is not. It's not as if last year. Look, they went on a 5-game run at the end of the year, which made them interesting. Their defense is playing very well again, but there hasn't been enough for, I think, most Giants fans, myself included, to be comfortable with Judge being the ironclad guy at this point.
So 2 questions. First of all, you said complete overhaul. Isn't that kind of what they tried to do last offseason? They spent a ton of money on a complete overhaul.
They did. I'm not talking about an overhaul from a player standpoint because of the salary cap. They can't.
Right. No,
you're
agreed.
stuck.
Yep.
I'm talking from an organizational standpoint, from management standpoint.
Okay.
That's where I'm going with this.
So the next question I have, let's presume that a quarterback becomes available. A quarterback named Russell Wilson. Let's just use Russell Wilson. Or even Deshaun Watson becomes available. Deshaun Watson obviously will be available.
Yeah, but the Giants are not signing Deshaun Watson, or not trading for Deshaun Watson. So
are they trading for Russell Wilson? That may be the most confusing match of those two.
Here's your problem. You're over the salary cap to begin with.
Yep.
You are trading a $6 million quarterback for a $40 million quarterback.
Well, no. Once you put him on his 5th-year option, it's more than $6 million.
Only 7.8 or 8.8. It's not. It's not his 5th year. It's his 4th year.
Oh, 4th year. Right. You're correct.
So it's 7 million, 8 million, whatever the number is. So we're trading an $8 million quarterback for a team that is at the salary cap at the peak.
Yep.
For a $40 million quarterback. We're also trading our 2 first-round picks because the trade is going to be a quarterback and is Jones in the 2 first-round picks. That's what it's going to be. We still have no offensive line. We can't get better on the offensive line because we have no salary. We have no room. I don't get it. I don't see it.
Okay.
And I think Wilson would like very much to be in New York. And under different circumstances, the trade is more interesting to me. But I am not convinced Jones is the problem. I'm convinced the offensive line is a freaking disaster. And the offensive play calling, we signed Kenny Golladay for a $70 million contract. He's been hurt half the year, and he's had 20 catches. What is that?
But you knew what you were signing when you were signing it.
I understand the injury. I'm not as. We took the shot on that. What I don't understand is the 3 picks is that you're throwing into him 3 times a game when he's healthy.
No, that's true.
So, to me, I don't make the deal.
Okay.
Because the Giants are going to be too hamstrung to get the offensive line in good shape, and they're going to be trading their picks. And really, all you have is Russell Wilson going from one crap show with no offensive line to another crap show with no offensive line.
Yeah.
Now, his wife may be happier, but, that's not really what I'm concerned about.
No, understood. So we have some interesting teams that have done things. So you say that Indianapolis at 6-6 is going to overtake Tennessee at 8-4. I should look, to be fair, I should look at the schedule.
I did not. I was kind of because we were playing with the other thing.
Right. So here, Indianapolis plays Houston this week. That's probably a win. Mm-hmm. They have a hard schedule. They play at home versus New England, at Arizona.
That's tough.
It's a tough game. Home against Vegas, and that's not an easy game.
No, like that's a 50-50. That's a 60-40 game for them.
Right. And they finish up against Jacksonville at Jacksonville, which is probably a win.
So we're probably looking at 3-2.
Okay. So 3-2, and you got to make up 2 games.
So let's see what
Tennessee has at home against Jacksonville.
That should be a win.
At the Steelers.
That's probably a loss.
Home against the Niners. Probably a loss. Home against the Dolphins. Could go either way. And at the Texans, which is probably a win. Although they lost to the Texans.
So Tennessee probably – okay, I take it back. Tennessee probably will hold. Wait a minute. Didn't Tennessee just lose to Jacksonville last week?
Tennessee lost to the Texans last week.
To the Texans last week. You said that was they played Jacksonville this week.
Yes.
Wow.
And they hold the tiebreaker over the Colts because they've beaten them twice.
They beat them twice. Okay. Then it's a 3-game lead. It's not a 2-game lead, and they're not going to overtake a 3-game lead. Yeah. I take it back.
No, and we were right in the respect that the AFC West is all over 500. It's 6-5 Raiders, 6-5 Broncos, 6-5 Chargers, and 7-4 Kansas City. I mean,
yeah. And if you combine the Chargers offense and the Denver defense,
you're doing great.
You got a threat.
Yeah.
I mean, how the Chargers are 6-5 is a complete and utter mystery to me. That team is so talented. They're good defensively. They're good offensively. They haven't been the prior, the other Chargers where they would lose 4 games on a field goal, on a 20-yard field goal at the end. That's like the Vikings this year for the most part. I mean, I don't really get why they are only 6-5. Just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and the Chargers seem to always have these problems, right? First it's kicking, then it's injuries. Now it's Mike Williams decided to show up for the first 5 games and not the rest of the season, which is generally what happens with him. And then
to me, the Chargers are to the AFC what Minnesota is to the NFC.
A high-octane offense, a decent defense, but can never put the two of them together.
Yeah, well, look, we've had times where Minnesota was one of the 5 best defenses in the league.
Yep.
And they didn't have the offense.
Right.
Now they have the offense, and their defense is a sieve.
So here's your surprise of the year. I think there are 2 of them, right? Well, 1. The Falcons at 5-6. I don't know how the Falcons are 5-6. I just don't.
They played the team. They played 2 games in East Rutherford. That's how they're 5-6.
Maybe, but they're minus 103 on the point differential, which makes you wonder how the heck that happens at 5-6. And
I mean, how much did they beat you guys by?
I don't even remember. It was a lot.
I mean, they beat the Giants by 4, and that never should have happened.
They beat the Giants by 3. They beat the Jets by 7. But they lost to the Bucks 48-25. They lost.
That was actually a good game.
They lost the Eagles. They lost the Eagles 32-6, and they lost to the Cowboys and the Patriots by a combined 68-3.
Yeah, that is.
And then they beat the Jaguars. But a team that has no talent, right? No, they are the team that when you play on Madden, you triple cover Kyle Pitts and you say, okay, anybody else? Anybody else want to do something?
To be fair, Calvin in Madden, Calvin Ridley's not out for the year with personal issues.
That's fair.
So you may only be double teaming Kyle Pitts.
That's true. Well, they play the Bucks, the Niners, the Bills, and the Saints.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that is the Lions at home, which may be the Lions' best shot at winning this year. The Lions, man, that was hard to watch. It was just because they should have won the game, like against the Bears. They
should have won the game the week before.
So the Lions, oh boy, the Lions have Minnesota At Minnesota, that's a loss. Although you never know the way you just said them. And At Denver. No, sorry. Minnesota's at home. At Denver.
Oh, God.
Home against Arizona.
At Atlanta. At the Seahawks, and home against the Packers.
At Seattle, which is probably a loss, right? Even how bad Seattle is. And then at Green Bay, which might be a win because by that point, Green Bay may have the number 1 seed wrapped up.
You're legitimately looking at 16-1.
Hey, at least they got the 1.
Yeah. And then you're going to have the first pick in the weakest draft I think we've ever seen.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. So let's look at this roster, and you tell me on the depth chart. All right, Jared Goff, not a building block, right? No way. DeAndre Swift, maybe.
Nice player.
Okay.
I mean, it's not a need.
Khalif Raymond, not a building block.
A nice number 3 wideout.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, again, nice number 3. Josh Reynolds, nice number 3. Maybe 2, maybe. But he got waived by the Titans, who could really use a wideout right now. TJ Hawkinson, that's a building block.
Good player.
Yeah, a starter. Jason Cabina, no. He's their fullback.
To be fair, we know the offensive line we're not going to go through because...
No, they actually have 2 guys that could start in Decker and Sewell if they actually stayed healthy.
Well, no, Sewell, I mean, their best one is Ragnow, but he's on the IR. He's the center.
Right.
He's a good player.
So they have 3 offensive linemen, a running back that may be a starter, and the tight end that is. So out of the 11 players on their offense, they have 5, maybe 6 legitimate stars on any other team. So now let's go to the defense. Michael Brockers, no. I mean, he's a good player. He's 33 years old. He's not a building block.
No,
he's just a guy,
starter.
Right? Aleem McNeil, Nick Williams, Trey Flowers. No, and no. Alex Anzalon, no. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, no.
I don't know who these guys are. So
here's the thing. If I'm not picking them up and they're a middle linebacker in our fantasy league team, they're not building blocks. Their corners are Amani Oruwai.
Oruwai's play actually has, I think, 5 interceptions.
Yeah, he's out of Syracuse. Good player. They have Jeff Okuda, who's injured on the IR. Will Harris, Trace Walker, Jerry Jacobs. So they have 2, maybe 3 defensive players that would start. So they have a total of 8 or 9 out of 22.
Yeah.
And they have the number 1 pick in the weakest draft. Now they do have, I believe they don't have the Rams pick. Not this year. It's next year.
Is it next year? I don't know.
I still think it's the Jalen Ramsey is to Jacksonville first round.
It's hard to keep up.
Hold on. We gotta find that out. I believe they have, here we go. Projected order. Detroit. Who's got the Rams pick? It's like a new game every year. Who's got the Rams first round pick? Detroit. They do. They're 20. They have the first and the 23rd pick right now. So yeah, Detroit's really bad and not getting any better.
No,
like that's the worst part. Okay, so let's move on to something that is getting better, and that's baseball. Hey, no.
If you're a Rangers fan, you're happy.
If you're a Mets fan, you're happy.
Are you happy losing Baez? Or are you okay
yes.
No, I'm asking. Like, I'm not being sarcastic.
So here's the thing about Javier Baez. Javier Baez is one of the most exciting players in baseball, without a doubt.
So is Vince Coleman.
Basically, I was just going to say the same thing. He also swung at 44% of all pitches last year. He had 184 strikeouts. That's Rob Deere territory. He walked, I believe, 24 times. He is the most frustrating player to watch. because you know he's never going to take a ball. Yes, losing Javier Baez is fine. Absolutely fine. Getting a center fielder like Starling Marte, getting a guy that can actually play.
And not a terrible contract.
No. Well, he's also 33 years old, so that's part of it.
That's why. But
none of these contracts, the good thing about, so they got Caja, they got Eduardo Escobar, Max Scherzer, and Starling Marte. And look, I don't care. You and I have discussed this. I don't care what you give somebody over a 1-year deal. I don't. 1 year, there's no bad 1-year deal. There's probably no bad 2-year deal either. Once you get into the 4 and 5 year range, that's when you have problems with deals. So the deals that they have given these guys are 2 and 3 year deals. Yes. Now they're all
Marte's four.
Marte's four. But Marte could switch over to left field probably.
Bet you didn't think I knew that. There you go.
Congrats. And I believe that Scherzer is actually an option for the 3rd year.
He
has an opt-out. He has an opt-out.
You're opting out of $43 million, so it doesn't really matter.
One would hope. Anyway, so
you would have to be a dumpster fire. Now, look, we've seen the Mets as dumpster fires.
Hold on. If he puts up 2 Cy Young Award years and he can get 2 years at 60 versus 1 year at 45, he'll go get the 2 years at 60.
Depends how close the Mets are to a championship. If they're right there, I mean, right now you're looking at, I'm just off the top of my head, you have him and DeGrom, who if healthy is the best 1-2 there is.
Yep.
You have the guy from Seattle, Walker, who's the 3.
Yep.
Most likely. Matt Harvey's not walking through that door. Noah Syndergaard's not walking through that door. Zach Wheeler's not walking through that door. Steven Metz is not walking through that door.
I give you a lot of credit for knowing all the ex-Mets.
I remember because they were the last relevant staff they had.
You didn't say Marcus Stroman. That was the last one.
Marcus Stroman I know is gone. But Marcus Stroman wasn't on the team that went to the World Series.
True. Fair enough. No.
So I don't know if you have the depth, and I don't. I'm not being sarcastic.
No,
I just don't.
Look. The one thing about all these signings is that these are older players, right? They're 33, and 33-year-olds tend not to be on the upswing, but rather on the downswing, and that's the fear, right? Is that they all break down at the exact same time. And we have I don't remember what the year Coleman was, but it was Coleman and Saberhagen. And we have the worst team. 92, that's what I was going to think. The worst team money can buy, right? And there was a book by, I think it was Jeff Passan.
Jeff Pearlman, I thought.
Jeff Pearlman? Okay. So Vince Coleman... Yeah, I believe that was 1992. You're probably right. We're just going to check that off. 1992, well done. Where the Mets, so this is the starting lineup for the Mets that year. Todd Hundley, Eddie Murray, Willie Randolph, Dick Schofield. Wow. Dave Magadan, Darryl Boston, who was later replaced by Vince Coleman because Coleman only played 71 games that year. Howard Johnson played center field, and Bobby Bonilla played right. But they spent a ton of money in that offseason on Bonilla, Coleman, and
Saberhagen. Are they done paying off Bonilla yet? He's got to be close to being done.
No, they're not. That's the problem.
No, that's not the problem. The problem is you spent $324 million on a shortstop who hit 240. Assuming he bounces back. But
how much did you say? $240 million?
340.
Right, $340 million.
Yeah.
And that extension doesn't come into play until this year.
I hear my daughter crying. That may be listening to $340 million go down the drain.
Well, and let's talk about some of those other shortstops that signed just this week. So Texas goes and spends a boatload of money.
$500 million on 2 players, not including Jonathan Gray.
Right.
$500 million.
And they both play the same position, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I assume they move Semien to second, or they're going to move Seager to third. Those are your options.
The issue that is going to be fun is that Semien is the better of the shortstops, and they're going to be having to move Seager. They're not going to move Seager under any circumstances. Seager's the better offensive player. Simeon's the better defensive player. So we still have two shortstops left in Carlos Correa and Trevor Story. I don't think either one's coming to the Bronx.
I don't think so either. I think the Yankees I don't know exactly what the Yankees are doing because it doesn't seem to be much, but their two biggest prospects are shortstops. And I think they're just going to Anthony Volpe. I forget who the other one is, or two of their 3 or 4 biggest prospects are shortstops. I think they're just waiting for them at this point.
And they still have Gleyber Torres. I mean, they still have their guys, right? Today they tendered Gary Sanchez, which was something where I was like, really?
Him?
Well, the thing about him is that when you're a catcher and you can't catch, that's a problem.
Well, it's a bigger problem when you can't catch or hit.
Well, that's true. And
I mean, I can do that. I can not catch or not hit as well as anybody.
Could you stay behind the plate for a 100-mile-per-hour fastball?
For $9 million a year, I would figure out how.
You take the first injury like Peter McNeely.
All I need to do is last 45 seconds. I feel like there's a joke in there somewhere.
Oh, there's definitely a joke. But so who knows?
Charlie, are you listening? Where do you want to call in? Please do.
Well, first of all, the lockout's going to be denied.
Yeah.
Like that's first and foremost. And for those that don't understand why there is a lockout, well, there is no labor agreement. And without a labor agreement, the risk is on the owners if the players get hurt. So the owners will technically, quote, lock out the players out of facilities and whatnot in order to protect their interests. Is it a strike? No. Is it a strike-like thing? Yes. And all we'll hear for the next month is labor, 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 which is what we've been hearing for the last 3 years. And baseball can't afford that. You and I, Seth, you and I discussed this last year before COVID. Baseball lost their shot. They had a shot for a month to get every sports fan watching baseball.
Yep.
A full month, and they blew it. And they blew it because of labor. There has not been a work stoppage in 26 years. That's true. But the problem is we're always talking about labor when it comes to baseball. And we're not necessarily talking about that with football, basketball, or hockey. And hockey even lost a season, and we don't remember that. But we do remember that there's always been baseball labor strife.
Well, because baseball's always been a much more relevant sport.
That's true, too.
Its relevancy, and I've talked about this on the Gary Age show. I've talked about it with you. Baseball's relevancy it's still there, but is way, way down.
Oh, yeah, it's declining. Well, because most of the baseball fans are our age.
No, they're older.
Well, our age and older, I mean. Like
their probably average demo is in the 60s. I mean, that's just what it is. It's not what it is in basketball. It's not what it is in football. It's not what it is in MMA. It's not what it is in esports. And understand, I am not an I don't get esports. I think it's ridiculous. But that demo, that is the demo people go for. That is what advertisers want.
And that's what the NBA has.
Yeah. And I mean, if you ask my parents, you know my parents for many, many years. My parents know more sports than the average, know sports pretty well. If you ask them to name one baseball, if you ask them to name who Mookie Betts or Mike Trout is, they would have no idea.
But they know who Stephen Curry is.
They certainly know who Stephen Curry is. They know who half the Giants are. They know who the Jets are. They know, my dad called me on to talk about the Michigan-Ohio State game. I mean, my parents were brought up baseball fans. It's too slow. Yeah. It's not, and it's a boring game made for 2 generations ago. That's just what it is.
And is there any way to get it? There's no way to speed it up. Like, that's the thing. There's no way.
No. I mean, look, you can say you can't go out of the batter's box, or you can limit the number of pitching changes. And yes, that will do a little bit.
Right.
But at the end of the game, and look, there's a minute between every pitch.
Yep.
Now look, when you're in the bottom of the 9th inning of a tie game in the 7th game of a playoff,
that's awesome.
It's awesome. When you're at a Pirates Padres game in the middle of July, it's agonizing.
Yes.
So you have, that's where they are. And it's a sport where, as you said, labor is always, you don't hear about the NBA labor. You don't really hear about NFL, and you don't hear that much, as you said, the NHL lost the season. You don't really hear much about the NHL.
Yeah.
You only hear about it in baseball. And it's very difficult to root for either side, to be perfectly honest.
Well, the hard part is that both sides want to play it out publicly. And the public doesn't want to hear it. That's the biggest thing, is that we just don't want to hear it.
Nope.
We just want this to be over, right? The NBA with Michelle Roberts puts it in the back, right? They negotiate in silence and they come to a labor agreement, right? The NFL negotiated in silence. Yes.
Maybe not in silence, but certainly closer to what the NBA does than to Major League Baseball.
And the vote, while contentious, was done and it's over and moving on. And now they know they have 8 years of labor peace. It is what it is. And they did a protocol for COVID without any issue. This is the way they trust each other. That's the hardest part, is that they trust each other. Even Donald Fear, who was the guy that brought up all the strikes in baseball, is now the lead negotiator in the NHL. And they still did the bubble without any problems whatsoever.
Nope.
It was just done. Why?
Baseball had the advantage that you could be outside.
Yeah.
Made things a lot easier.
Whatever baseball could. And look, for those that did not listen or watch the show during COVID,
where were you? You had time.
Well, that's number really one, because you had nowhere else to be. But most importantly, I watched the first game of that season. Yep. And then I did not watch another game the rest of the year. For me, not including the World Series, for me not to watch baseball for a full season is unheard of. Unheard of. I've never done it.
To be fair, Disney Plus had a lot of the Marvel adventure movies on.
Not during COVID. That was after COVID. But anyway, so we got about 15 minutes left. We do need to touch upon really the news of the week, right? There's two things. First of all, Michigan pays their coach less, has the same coach, and he finally beats Ohio State. That's like a trifecta of winning for Michigan, is the fact that they paid him all that money and he lost. So he takes a pay cut and he wins. So that's perfect for them. And Jim Harbaugh has now saved his job, for 5 more years?
Let him beat Iowa first, please, before he saved it. Because the most Michigan thing that could possibly happen is they lose the Big Ten championship. And if they lose the Big Ten championship,
chaos.
Look, you're the only team that is definitive at this point is Georgia.
Cincinnati's definitive if they win.
If they win, I'm saying, but Georgia. But since it's not Houston.
Oh, Georgia loses, they're still in. Okay.
Alabama doesn't belong in this, whether they win or not. To be perfectly honest. Well, I guess that shouldn't say that. If they win, they do.
If they win, they definitely belong.
But as of now, they have had 2 top 25 wins. They have not been impressive. They have not been good. They should not have beaten Auburn. That was horrendous. And boo to Brian Harsin, the coach of Auburn, who was who's got the chance in the overtime to go for a 2. And this is not a hindsight call. My father and I were watching this when we got home from dinner. And we both said at the same time, how do you not go for the 2-point conversion right now? You're not as good a team. What are you doing?
Were they playing at home? I don't remember.
Playing at home. Okay. But I don't know if you saw what happened. Alabama went 97 yards in the last 90 seconds to tie the game.
Okay.
Auburn had let up 3 points in 58 minutes. Their guy accidentally went out of bounds with 1:40 to go. which would have run 40 seconds off the clock. And then Alabama got the ball on their own 3. So they would have had to go a minute with no timeouts. They wouldn't have happened. With a minute 40,
that would have been a lot more chaos for me.
Well, that would have eliminated Alabama. You're not Alabama. Two-loss team isn't winning, and Alabama is not better than Georgia. They should not win this game. So you're looking at Notre Dame, whose season is over at 11-1. They're done.
Wait, why are they done?
No. I'm saying they're not playing. They don't have a game.
Oh, okay. Got it. So their regular season is over.
Their regular season is over. So we have Georgia, Alabama. Georgia's in no matter what.
Yep.
Alabama wins, they're in. They lose, they're out.
Okay.
Michigan wins, they're in. They lose, they're out.
Cincinnati. Who's in? Well, who's in?
Well, I think Michigan beats Iowa because I think they would literally torch Ann Arbor.
Well, Oklahoma State is
Iowa team.
Well, Notre Dame is number 5, right? And Oklahoma State is
number 6.
Oh, so it's flipped. Sorry.
So what Notre Dame realistically needs, they need Cincy to lose.
Well, they need one of those teams to lose.
But they need Cincy to lose because also they lost to Cincy at home.
Oh, so they can't jump them. Right.
They can't jump them. Honestly, Cincy shouldn't even matter to them. They shouldn't be able to jump Cincy either way. Notre Dame hasn't beaten anyone really special either.
Right.
I mean, the 2 or 3 best wins we've seen this year is Cincy over Notre Dame.
Yep.
Michigan over Ohio State.
Yep.
And Oklahoma State over Oklahoma.
Yep.
Now, Oklahoma State's sitting there at number 5. If they beat Baylor, they have 3 top 15 wins, and they're 11-1. That leads to a really, really interesting call. Because if you have 3 wins in your number 1, 3 wins, your 1 loss is by 4 points to Iowa State, who's a pretty decent team, and you don't make the final, you don't make it.
Well, who are you cutting out?
Well, we're saying Georgia wins, we're saying Michigan wins, we're saying Cincinnati wins.
And we're saying, because Bama's going to lose to Georgia.
Bama gets knocked out, and then you have Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State probably would deserve it.
But they wouldn't get it.
Probably not.
And then you have potentially 2 teams in the 4, potentially, and we'll get to that in a second, that may not have their coach.
Not.
Let's move on to where that goes, right?
Yeah. I don't think Fickell. I think if Notre Dame wants to hire Fickell, which would make all the sense in the world.
And they have to wait.
I think Fickell's going to make him wait.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because Fickell's not Brian Kelly.
Well, he also wants to prove a point, right?
Yeah. Fickell. I think the thought process is Notre Dame is not good enough to win a national championship with this team, which is why Kelly jumped. Not why Kelly.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's back it up and talk for those that are not aware of what's happening and what we're talking about. Brian Kelly, the Notre Dame coach, signs a huge, ridiculously huge contract. And when I say huge, let's talk about let's talk about what this contract is. So he gets a yearly $9 million salary, which increases to 9.2 every year. And then $200,000 more every 2 years before reaching $10 million in 2031. Yes, 2031. However, he also earns a $500,000 longevity bonus each July of the contract year, and another $500,000 for each season that LSU is bowl eligible. Now, to be fair, LSU has been bowl eligible 20 straight years. So in all likelihood, he's going to get that one. In total, he will receive $1.35 million annually in max incentives, which includes an SEC and national title. In addition to the bonuses, they will provide a loan of 20% of a home price up to $1.2 million interest-free, and 2 vehicles or 2 vehicle allowances of $1,000 a month. Wait, there's more. Other provisions of the contract include that the Tigers will owe Kelly 90% of the salary if fired without cause. So just fired. However, if he wins the national championship and the program will owe him 100% if they set him free. And if Kelly chooses to leave, LSU would pay him $2 million after the second contract year.
You know who I blame for this?
Got all that?
You know who I blame for this?
Who's that?
Michigan State.
Who? Michigan State with Mel Tucker? It's not Michigan State. It's their boosters.
You paid a second-year coach.
Who won 2 games.
His first year.
Now,
again, Michigan State's had an excellent year. You paid him $95 million.
Over 10 years.
Over 10 years. 9. So, if you look at that.
Is Brian Kelly worth
Kelly?
Yeah. Look, nothing spells Irishman like New Orleans. I mean, nothing. I mean, in the bayou, I mean, nothing spells that. Do you think this succeeds? Do you think this is a success?
Kelly going to LSU?
LSU.
For Brian Kelly, it will be.
No, let's talk about for LSU, though.
Do I think he'll win a national title there? I don't know. I mean, it's a toss-up. He's certainly a good enough coach, too. He'll be able to recruit there. He'll be right there. I mean, look, Ed Ogeron won a national title. Les Miles won a national title. Kelly has done a lot more than either of them down in LSU. So we got to give him a couple of years. But there's no reason he won't be in the running for it. Forget next year, but in 2 or 3 years, he'll be in the running. He'll be right up there.
Recruiting's never going to be a problem at LSU. Ever. No. Ever. It's one of the most fertile states of athletes. And it's kind of like growing up in central New York and wanting to play basketball for Syracuse if you're a basketball player, because it's the only game in town. No, I'm just saying it's the only game in town. You could put that in Indiana, right? So you grow up in I was going to say French Lick, but then you got Bird went to Indiana State. But that doesn't – but he first went to
Indiana first.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So it's kind of like Damon Bailey growing up in Indiana. There's only one place he wanted to go play. Even as Mr. Indiana basketball, he went to Indiana. If you're growing up in LSU, growing up in Louisiana, the only place you want to play college ball is Louisiana, LSU. So I don't think recruiting is a problem. The personality may be a problem because
– yeah, but you know what? His personality, he's never – look, he left Cincy to go to Notre Dame in the same way. He left, I think it was Grand Canyon State to go to Cincy in the same way. There's an article about it in Sports Illustrated. Pretty much this is what he does. He is not a personable guy. That's not what he's being brought in. He's being brought in as a mercenary to win titles. And he will be right there. And
wait, mercenaries are not on 10-year contracts.
Fine. He's not being brought in. He's not being brought in. He's being brought in to win titles. Look, everybody, yeah. I get that. And for LSU, look, let's be honest. The only thing that matters in Louisiana is I guess the Saints, but is LSU football. That's all.
Right. All right. So we got 5 more minutes. I don't want to jump off this too much. So we'll forego the last 5 minutes, but I want to talk about a Lincoln going to LA. And are you surprised?
Yes, I'm shocked. I'm not shocked he left. I think Oklahoma going to the SEC is a calamity. I'm surprised he went to USC.
Is it a death sentence for Oklahoma football going to the SEC?
It's not a death sentence, but it's not it makes them a second-tier team.
Well, and that's what I mean by a death sentence. They're not going to be competing for national championships.
I don't think so.
They're not going to be competing for the playoffs. They went because Texas went, right?
I mean, look, their AD Castellano, Joe, I forget the last name, Castellano. It's one of the best in the country. He'll bring in somebody who's decent. But let's be honest. They've been the best team in a weaker conference. And by going to a stronger conference, you are going against Alabama, the best program in the last 15 years, Georgia, a top 5 program in the last 15 years, LSU, a top 15 program, a top 10 program of the last 10 years. So you're not really you'll occasionally make but again, remember they're going to expand the playoff.
Sure.
So the playoff, if they're not going to be a top 4, they're not going to win the conference very often. And we're not even talking about what Texas is. God knows. I mean, Texas is right now has just been floundering for 15 years since the Vince Young run against USC. I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. The Colt McCoy year, where they lost Alabama in 2010.
Hold on. Let's put a pin in that. And let's get back to Lincoln, and okay. we'll circle back on this in the next couple of weeks because we got plenty of time to talk about Oklahoma going to the SEC. So first, where does Oklahoma go here? It's not going to be Bob Stoops returning to his glory days.
No, I don't know.
It would be funny if it's Josh Heupel, who got fired and now is returning.
I don't get the hype, pardon the pun. He did a good job at South Florida, but let's be honest, he pretty much rode Scott Frost's coattails.
Sure.
He did a good job in 1 year at Tennessee.
Yep.
But he doesn't talk to Oklahoma. Like, they have no relationship.
Right.
And he thinks he's got a good thing at Tennessee. I don't see that happening. I wonder, they're going to probably make a run at Matt Campbell.
Yep.
Which would make sense, but if I'm Campbell,
why?
I don't know if I want that job.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest. Notre Dame, yes. But again, whoever's going there is put in an almost impossible situation because you're following Lincoln Riley, who brought them to 2 or 3 playoffs. And the expectation is you're going to be a top 5 team every year. Look, maybe not from an outsider, disassociated third-party view, but from Oklahoma internal people and by the fans, they see themselves at that Alabama-Georgia threshold. And Oklahoma's been able to hit that threshold because they haven't played the schedules because they've been in the Big 12. The Big 12 has been very, it's been relatively mediocre. Yep. The SEC is not.
Yeah.
It's not a great conference. I mean, it hasn't been a great conference this year, I shouldn't say. But the high end is very high. The middle is very high. The low is just low. But I don't know.
What's the ceiling for Lincoln at USA?
Oh, championships.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. Because they've already got the number 2 QB in the country going out there.
Sure.
They have a 5-star quarterback playing there right now. They don't have a lot of competition out there. They have Oregon, and Chip Kelly's done okay at UCLA, but they're not USC when it comes to football.
Sure.
I mean, they should be within 2 to 3 years back in the running for a college football playoff every year.
All right. So we're going to stop here.
Once you get to the playoff, look, to a degree, it's a crapshoot.
Sure. Just like every other, right. Just like the NFL. It's a crapshoot. So we're going to stop here and we'll pick this up again next week. That's Seth Kamens over there. I'm Sean Palmer over here. Seth and Sean Sports Radio. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and all the things on the interwebs. And
are we hosting live next week? Are we hosting
live next week? Why? Oh, I will. No, I'll be in New York.
Yeah, maybe we host Monday.
We'll see. All right, we'll talk about it. All right, guys, have a great week. See ya.
Bye.